Okay, welcome back everybody. As promised, this is our second video, and in this video we're still talking about the interface of the program, but we're going to get into depth on the options bar up here at the top. In my last video I explained to you guys that this is the way I like to think about it is under the hood of the program, meaning you have access to every single tool and technique that the program offers from these options up here. And when you find yourself stuck looking for a tool or looking for a possibility of something, this is where you're going to really refer to. This is the entire program up here. So let's just get right into it. First thing we see up here is we see the icon of the program that we're using, right? AI stands for Adobe Illustrator. This is actually a button. You can click on it and you get a drop down that'll give you access to things like restore, move, size, minimize, maximize, and close. Alternatively, the buttons for those options are over here on the right side where you have close, restore, minimize. Okay, so that's your first example. You've got buttons, and then you can dive in to drop down menus where you get the same functionality as those buttons over there. It goes for every button you see in the program. Okay, so the other reason that the icon AI is up here in the corner is because the interface and the look of these programs, these Adobe programs like Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, they all kind of look the same. So this is your indicator of what program you're using. All right. It's not rocket science. I'm sure you'll be able to remember what program you're using, but if you happen to forget, or if you open it up and you find yourself super confused where stuff is, you might actually be using Photoshop instead. So keep your eyes peeled for what program you're using. Under the File menu, let's just start there. So you click on File, you get this drop down. File's your best friend. It's the same File menu as every other program that you use to write essays with in school. You know, File, New, to create a new document. You've got New from Template here. This has to refer to a series of pre-made templates for artboard templates for things like if you want to make a business card and you don't want to go through the trouble of setting up an artboard to the size of a business card, a standard size of a business card, they make a template for it, and you can open the template for that. There's also things like CD cover, or like if you want to make graphics for a CD, they'll have pre-made line work that you can work from in the shape of a CD. So don't worry about it. We're going to be learning to make all of our own custom-sized artboards, and so we're going to be way more advanced than using templates, and so that's a promise. You've got Open. This is where you go to open a new file that you've already created. Open recent files. This will give you access to a lot of the files you've already created. This can be great if you lose your files or you save them in the wrong spot, can't find them. And then you got a bunch of other stuff that's grayed out right now, and that's because we haven't created a new artboard, we haven't created a new file, we haven't started the drawing yet. But things like close and save as, things like save for web, also things like print, these are all located underneath the File menu. Okay, so that's that. Underneath the Edit menu, you've got goodies like undo and redo. That's super helpful. And if you take a look here, you've got the function here, which is undo, and then you've got the hotkey over to the right. So the hotkey for undo is Control Z. That's pretty common knowledge out there. It's probably the most used tool in the entire Adobe suite is undo. So if you're going to learn any hotkeys in the class, let's have it be undo, Control Z. All right, there we go. Next, we've got things like cut, copy, paste. We've got paste in front, paste in place. These can be super helpful. Paste on all artboards, that's an option for you. We'll cover all those different specialized paste options as we start to build out a drawing. And then as we get lower down into these drop downs, we get into some more advanced stuff. You can usually count on that. The higher up you are on a drop down, the more easy the function is to perform. The lower down, the more advanced the function is. So things like keyboard shortcuts, where you go to make your own custom hotkeys, that's way down here at the bottom. Or the preferences of the program. This is a good one, which gives you access to all the different preset settings of the program, where you wouldn't really get into that unless you were an advanced user, and we probably won't cover it in our class. But as you get into Illustrator, this is where you go to get that. Object panel is up next. Object drop down. We've got things like transform and arrange, other goodies like group and ungroup. There's also some other fun stuff in here. There's things like pattern and blend, and there's also things like live paint and image trace. You might have heard of those maybe in your rumors about Adobe Illustrator. We're going to be learning to do all of our own image tracing, so we're not going to be using anything like that because we want the precision of our own hand. So we'll be going at it through that route. Anyway, that's the object panel. Make yourself familiar with it. The type one is up next, and this is where you have access to all your fonts, recent fonts that you've used. We've also got size of the font. You can change the size of a font from up here. You can also pick a different font. You've also got other stuff down here like find a font that can be helpful. Also, some really valuable stuff like create outlines. That doesn't make any sense right now, but as we move through the program, we're going to find that to be super valuable, and we'll talk about that as we get into creating type in the program. Next up is select, where we have select all on active artboard. We have select inverse, select next object above. These are all things we'll talk about. Select all is a pretty common maneuver in the computer, right? Control A to select all or select everything you've done. So this is a good example, a good chance for us to talk about, there's the hotkey. That's one way to do it. The other way is to come up here to the drop down and select all from up here. So again, under the hood of the program, that's where we're at. Next up is the effects button, which we go to the effects drop down. We see a list of Illustrator effects and Photoshop effects. These things can be things like, the pathfinder for add, subtract, trim, merge, crop, other things like stylize where we can get drop shadows, outer glow, things like that. There's also warp, which is a fun Illustrator effect where you can warp your graphics in an arc or in a bulge or in a fisheye lens. And then we've got a selection of these Photoshop effects too. A lot of times, most all the time, Adobe users that own Photoshop and Illustrator together will use the two programs in combination with each other at the same time almost. And that was probably happening so much that Adobe realized people were flipping back and forth creating graphics in Illustrator and then throwing them into Photoshop to apply effects, that they just brought the Photoshop effects into Illustrator. So underneath here we have things like blur, and we have other goodies like glowing edges under stylize. Unfortunately, our purposes for this class is going to be really to use Illustrator to create line work that can drive the laser cutters in our rapid prototyping studio. So we're not going to get a chance to do too much illustration work or too much drawing work. So these Photoshop effects and Illustrator effects won't really apply to us, but it's just good to know where all the effects are located and how to get your hands on them. So it's under the effects here. Next up is view, and under view we have a large collection of random things like overprint preview, pixel preview. There's things like actual size, which can be helpful for keeping track of the scale of the drawing that you're making. There's also good stuff like the show print tiling, show artboard. These things here can be used for if you're trying to print out a set of line work that's larger than the pages available in your printer. So if you want to do something bigger than 8.5 by 11 and all your printer has is 8.5 by 11, you can create a tiled graphic or a tiled document, and this show print tiling function here is really helpful for doing that. So we'll get there. Let's see, next out we've got things like smart guides and guides where you can turn on and off your guides. You can also open up a grid, show a grid, and there's also other good stuff here like rulers. So a lot of times it can be super helpful to have some rulers on your page so that you can quickly glance and see how big is the drawing that you're making and try to relate that to the real world. Next up is window, and under window we've got some stuff. This is really where we get access to all the tools available in the program. All the tools that you see over here in your panels bar are located here, and this is the way to manually operate all of these panels over here, and all these tools that are in the panels bar is up here. So you'll see right off the bat you'll see a kind of carbon copy of what's over here. We've got this one says, what is this? This one is, there's color guide, and if we open it up we've got color guide, and this is called cooler. That's a Adobe color matching system. We've got swatches here, and we can find all of that stuff underneath here. Right there, it's in alphabetical order, so we've got swatches. You also see how when I activate a tool in my panels bar, it puts a little check box next to the window, next to the tool in the Windows drop down. And so here we go again. There's cooler and color and all the things from the first one we looked at. Okay, so also something else to mention here is that the interface of the program is adjustable. You can take things like this and you can pull them out, and you can move these things all around. And under the Windows panel, we have the option to reset our workspace. So that can be really helpful if you get frisky and you want to like try to move these things around to be closer to your page so that you can draw better. It's always good to know how to reset that without restarting the program. And so you go to Workspace, and then you just go to Reset Essentials, and it'll reset it just like that. Okay, so Windows has some really valuable stuff. Try to get your head around that one. Also, next up, we've got the Help menu, and in the Help menu, you've got access to Illustrator's Help. If you click on that, it just opens up a web page that brings you to the Help menu online. So that's something you could check out if you're up for it. And then also you've got stuff like, let's see, About Illustrator, which will tell you the version of Illustrator that you're using. That can be helpful if anyone ever asks, what version of Illustrator are you using? You say, you know what, I can't even remember. Which one is it? And you go, oh yeah, it's 17.0.1, 64-bit. So there's that. And that's about it for the Help menu. Honestly, the stock Help menu that comes with the program is a bit dry and a little bit boring, so I don't really mess with it too much. It's my goal to not put you guys to sleep. But if you're so inclined and you're really digging the program, you can always go to this help site, and there's a lot of really fun tutorials that are in here if you're into it. So there's some grayed out stuff up here, and one of them is Go to Bridge. Bridge is a file organizational program that Adobe makes. I don't have it uploaded on my computer because I don't like it, and it's not part of our class to learn because we'll just go through the File Open menu to open up our files. We don't need anybody to tell us how to do it. But if you have it on your computer, you might want to click on it and play with it a little bit. And then there's an Arrange Documents thing that's grayed out here. This is if you open up multiple documents in Illustrator at one time, how they're displayed on the screen, whether it's tiled across from left to right or in a 4-panel grid. That's all arranged here under the Arrange Documents thing. We'll probably just be opening up one document at a time, and so we won't have to play around with that too much. So don't worry about it. We've already talked about the workspace templates here. There's also a search bar up here where you can go and type in any tool that you might be looking for. And when you hit return after typing in that tool to the search bar, it will open up the internet and give you a bunch of stuff. It'll tell you where the tool is. It'll give you a bunch of tutorials from the Adobe site. That's how the search button works up here. Okay. And that's basically it for the options bar. I already went over these buttons up here. These are pretty self-explanatory since we're using a PC. The close and restore and minimize buttons are over here on the right side. On a Mac, they'll be over here on the left. But you get it. So hopefully that helps you understand. Don't be afraid to dig around up here. This is where everything is located. So hopefully this description helps you out. And thanks for watching. In our next video, I'm going to be going over this toolbar here, and I'm going to go through each one of these tools and just talk about them for a little bit in detail. Okay? All right, great. So, like I said, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.